Welcome back to the deep dive. It is Monday, January 20th, 2026. And I have to ask, did you wake up this morning feeling just a bizarre mix of being completely restless but also strangely disciplined?
Uh-huh. Yeah.
Like you want to flip a table, but you also want to organize the silverware while you're doing it.
That is an oddly specific and yet entirely accurate description of the energy today. Yeah.
I thought so, because we are looking at a stack of sources today that address exactly that tension. We have a forecast and a really compelling narrative from Tarot by High C.
Mm-hmm.
And the mission for this deep dive is to figure out how to navigate this intersection of intuition and structure. Our source calls today a day for grown-up reinvention.
Grown-up reinvention. I love that phrase. But it's also, when you dig into it, it's actually quite demanding.
Right.
Usually when people talk about reinvention, they mean, blowing up your life and moving to a yurt. This is different.
This is not that.
This is about structural change that doesn't collapse the building.
Which is so much harder to pull off. So we're going to unpack the astrological weather, which gives us the diagnosis of why today feels this way. And then we're going to pair it with this StoryScope, a narrative about a place called Lattice City.
Yeah.
And I'll be honest, usually the stories are just fun flavor texts, but this one, this one is basically a manual for management theory.
It really is. I mean, the story provides the methodology. If the astrology says change is coming, the story tells you exactly how to engineer that change so it doesn't, turn into a disaster.
Okay.
It focuses on two big things: prioritizing pattern over detail and dialogue over debate.
Let's start with the landscape for today, January 20th. The headline in our source material is Updated Ideas, Open Doors. Simple enough. But then it drops a constraint that I found really challenging. It says, regarding decision-making today, if it comes as an impression, trust it. If it's an argument, doubt it.
And that is the core of the vibe shift we're seeing. We're moving through a transit where intuition is temporarily more data-rich than logic.
But let's play devil's advocate here. If I'm in a meeting at 10 a.m. and I tell my boss, I have a vague hunch we should pivot, versus I have a 10-point argument, I mean, the argument usually wins.
Of course.
So why is the source telling us to distrust the argument?
Because today, specifically, the argument is likely a defense mechanism. The source suggests that our logical brains are currently trying to reinforce the status quo.
Oh, interesting.
Building walls to keep things safe. The impression or the intuition, that's the only thing picking up on the necessary future changes.
So the logic is backward-looking, and the intuition is forward-looking.
Exactly. So if you find yourself mentally rehearsing a debate speech to justify why you shouldn't change something, stop.
Right.
That's the trap. But if you have that quiet, nagging feeling that a system is broken, even if you can't prove it yet, follow that feeling.
Okay, so we're trusting the gut. Now let's look at the mechanics of this grown-up reinvention. We have a specific alignment driving this. Saturn sextile Uranus.
This is the heavy lifting. Saturn is the planet of structure, tradition, the old guard. It's the walls of the house.
Sure.
Uranus is the planet of revolution, innovation, disruption. Usually when these two interact, it's a crisis. It's an earthquake.
Right, usually it's out with the old, in with the new, a total tear down.
But a sextile is a cooperative aspect.
Yeah.
It means the old and the new are like sitting down for coffee. They aren't fighting.
Okay.
So the energy isn't about destroying the structure. It's about the structure supporting the innovation.
The source used the phrase, no grand announcements.
Yes, this is crucial. This is not the day to post your resignation letter on social media or launch a product that's half-baked. That's the childish version of reinvention, the tantrum.
Right.
Grown-up reinvention is about smarter systems. It asks, how can we change the workflow without stopping the work?
It reminds me of those construction projects where they renovate a train station while the trains are still running.
That's it.
It's annoying, it's technical, but the station never closes.
That is the perfect analogy. And the source explicitly warns, don't shake the foundation so hard that improvements collapse in 3 days. We want consistency, not intensity.
Okay, however, just to make things complicated, we also have Mars in the mix.
We do.
Mars trine Uranus and Mars sextile Saturn. Mars is the gas pedal, right?
Mars is action, drive, and sometimes aggression. Mars trine Uranus is a very volatile combination. It's that urge to act out. It's that feeling of, I am bored, I am frustrated, let's just break something to see what happens.
So we have the renovate the train station energy from Saturn, but we have the let's drive a monster truck through the wall energy from Mars.
Correct. And that is why the Mars sextile Saturn aspect is so important. It acts as the chaperone.
Ah.
It says, okay, you have all this energy to break out of the rut. Don't waste it on a tantrum. Use it for meaningful intention.
Meaningful intention is better than meaningless action.
Right. If you feel limited today, don't pick a fight. Plan the exit strategy. Don't smash the glass. Cut the glass. It's about precision.
Now, we can't talk about systems and planning without talking about Mercury. Mercury is the messenger, the organizer, and it's making a big move today into Aquarius.
This changes the entire texture of our thinking. Mercury in Capricorn, where it was previously, is very practical, very hierarchical.
What's the rule? Who's in charge?
Exactly. Mercury in Aquarius breaks out of that. It becomes communal.
The text mentions a shift from detail to pattern.
This is a concept that I think is going to be vital for the next few weeks. Pattern over detail. When we get stressed, we tend to zoom in.
Oh, yeah.
We obsess over the typo, the specific email, the one rude comment. Mercury in Aquarius asks us to zoom out. Don't look at the data point, look at the trend line.
So instead of asking, why did John mess up this report?
Right.
We ask, is there a pattern in how our team communicates that causes these errors?
Precisely. You stop solving the symptom and start solving the network.
Yeah.
And the source emphasizes that socially, conversations should now be about the future, about community-focused solutions.
Which brings up the idea of the muse. There's a Mercury sextile Neptune aspect today, too.
Yes, the muse aspect. This softens the techie, logical edge of Aquarius. It brings in empathy. The instruction here is that words can be healing. It specifically says to release anger and resentment.
It's interesting that it frames healing as a structural thing. Like, if you want the system to work, you have to clear the emotional debris first.
We often separate soft skills from hard skills, right?
Yeah.
But this forecast is saying that clearing resentment is a prerequisite for building the new system. You can't build a new lattice if the connection points are corroded with old anger.
Before we move to the story, which illustrates this perfectly, there is a specific caution for tonight, the evening of the 20th, an Aquarius moon square Uranus.
A little pocket of turbulence.
Just a brief jolt. The source says you might feel a sudden spike of restlessness or emotional weirdness around the evening time.
And the advice is, do nothing.
Do not.
Don't overinterpret it. Don't decide that because you feel weird at 8 p.m., your entire life strategy is wrong. It's just planetary weather. Let it pass.
Good advice. Okay, let's pivot to the StoryScope. This is where the deep dive gets really fun. The story is called The Commons of Clear Speech, and it's set in a place called Lattice City.
And Lattice City is essentially a visual metaphor for that Mercury and Aquarius energy we just talked about. It's a society where communication is the physical infrastructure.
The protagonist is Iris. She's standing on the upper walkways of the city, and she can see ideas moving. The text describes them as threads of light drifting between people.
It's such a beautiful image. Proposals, questions, ideas, they aren't just sounds, they're building materials. Some burn bright and fade, others weave into the city itself.
And there is this governing concept called the commons. And the rule of the commons it stopped me in my tracks.
Speak so others could build on what you said.
Speak so others could build on what you said. I tried to apply that to my own conversations after reading this, and it is incredibly difficult.
It's hard because our default mode, especially in Western culture, is debate. We speak to distinguish ourselves or to deconstruct what someone else said.
Right, I disagree because, or actually the problem is,
We chip away at the other person's block. But in Lattice City, language shapes reality. The text says careless words collapsed systems faster than storms ever had.
wow.
So the rule forces you to offer a block that has a connector on top of it. You aren't finishing the thought, you are extending the lattice.
So in the story, the city is facing a crisis, and it sounds very familiar to our Saturn-Uranus theme. The coastal districts are sinking, the old flood barriers relics of crisis-era engineering are obsolete. They're holding, but they're rigid. They resist the water rather than adapting to it.
And the city needs a solution. Now, typically, this is where you'd have a political battle.
Yeah.
The Save the Wall Party versus the New Deal Party.
But they don't do that. They convene the forum. And it's described not as a debate, but as a mapping.
And look at who's there. It's these overlapping circles. Engineers with artists, historians with programmers. This is the network thinking of Aquarius. They aren't trying to win, they're trying to see the whole system.
The source notes, you didn't argue an idea into existence, you tested whether it harmonized.
That's a key distinction, harmonization versus domination.
Let's break down the voices in that room, because each one represents a piece of the puzzle we're supposed to solve today. First, you have Thomas, the elder.
He represents Saturn, history, tradition. He stands up and admits, We built walls because we were afraid. They worked, but they taught us to stand still.
I love that he isn't the villain. He isn't canceled for being old-fashioned. His contribution is valid context.
Right. Without him, they wouldn't understand why the walls exist in the first place. Then you get the young designer, the Uranus energy. She says, what if the barrier became a dialogue, a structure that listens to the water?
Which sounds lovely, but how do you build a structure that listens?
That's where the other voices come in to build on her block. A poet suggests naming the currents, creating a language for the water so people notice changes earlier.
Oh, that's smart.
A systems engineer proposes modular foundations. If one part fails, it doesn't take down the whole wall.
And a medic reminds them that fear makes people rigid and rigidity breaks.
It's this incredible synthesis. And Iris, the protagonist, her role is listener. She isn't the CEO, she's the translator. She takes all these inputs, the intuition, the engineering, the history, and she synthesizes the verdict.
And her verdict is the nugget I want everyone to write down. She says, we don't need a revolution. We need continuity with curiosity. Keep what is proven it can endure. Replace only what refuses to learn.
Replace only what refuses to learn.
That is such a sharp knife to take to your own life.
It really is. It prevents you from burning it all down. You look at your business, your relationship, your daily routine, and you just ask, which part of this is dead? Which part is rigid? Keep the rest. Just replace the dead wood.
And the reaction in the room isn't applause or anything. Someone just laughs softly and says, that sounds manageable.
Which, in the context of high-stakes infrastructure, is the best possible outcome. Manageable means sustainable. It means we can actually do this tomorrow morning.
So the outcome is this responsive lattice. It's a barrier that opens and closes with the tides. It breathes.
And there's that moment at the end where a child asks Iris, is it finished?
And she says, it's stable, which means it can change.
That paradox is the final lesson.
Right.
We tend to think stability means frozen. Concrete is stable until the earth moves and then it cracks.
Right.
But true stability, biological stability, is adaptation. If you are stable, you have the capacity to change without dying.
Let's bring this back down to earth. We have the astrology, we have the story. How do we apply Lattice City logic to a Monday in 2026?
I think we have to start with the communication rule, the next step test used in the story.
Okay.
Every contribution was tested against the questions. Does this make the next step easier or harder?
That is a very practical filter for, every email I send.
It changes everything. Before you hit send, look at your message. Are you dumping a confusing mess on your colleague? That makes the next step harder.
Sure.
Or are you organizing the information so they can immediately act? That makes the next step easier. You are building the lattice.
It's about being a conduit, not a blockage.
Exactly. And regarding the grown-up reinvention, the Saturn-Uranus aspect, it goes back to Iris's rule. Replace only what refuses to learn.
So don't walk into the office today and reorganize the entire department just because you feel restless.
Right. Look for the bottleneck. Look for the policy or the habit that is purely defensive, that isn't serving a purpose anymore. Change that and do it with the modular mindset. Make a small change that connects to the bigger system.
We also talked about the healing words aspect earlier, Mercury and Neptune. How does that fit into the lattice?
In the story, it mentions that healing conversations were infrastructure too. Iris spent her evenings helping people articulate things they hadn't forgiven themselves for.
That connects back to the idea that you can't build on top of resentment.
If your team or your family is harboring old grudges, that's structural rot. No amount of new systems or new apps will fix it.
Right.
You have to do the Neptune work, the healing work, to make the Saturn work, the structure hold up.
It also redefines what we mean by clarity. Iris says clarity isn't about simplification, it's about resonance.
We live in an age of sound bites.
Mm-hmm.
We think clear means short or dumbed down, but resonance is different. Resonance means the idea vibrates on multiple levels. It makes sense logically, it feels right intuitively, and it works practically.
Like a chord in music.
Yes. It's harder to achieve than a slogan, but it creates that responsive lattice. It holds people together.
So the mission for today, trust your intuition over your arguments. Look for the smarter system, not the grand announcement, and try to speak so that others can build on it.
Be the commons.
Be the commons. I like that.
And I want to leave the listener with one thought derived from the story's conclusion. We talked about boundaries.
Right, the flood barrier.
We usually view boundaries as walls. We put them up to keep the bad stuff out. Bad vibes, bad feedback, distraction.
I am closing my door. I am blocking you.
Exactly. But the story suggests that the strongest barrier wasn't a wall, but a conversation. It was a structure that listened to the water.
That's a radical shift in perspective.
So ask yourself, what if your boundaries were designed to listen to your environment instead of just resisting it? What if, instead of just blocking the pressure, you built a system that knows when to open and when to close based on the tide?
What if the strongest thing you can build isn't a wall, but a conversation? That is going to stick with me.
It's a powerful thought for a Monday.
Thank you for joining us on this deep dive. Let your ideas move through the network today, keep it manageable, and remember, stability means being able to change. We'll see you next time.
Take care.